Hello, and welcome to another episode of PsycKicks. My name is Liv. I'm a psychic medium, and today we're going to be talking about a Facebook post that I saw, actually. I know that might sound really weird. If you're new to the podcast, hello, my name is Liv. As I've already said, I am a psychic medium, and as such, my best friend, Em, who is not present right now, she's in spirit. She's taking a break from recording podcasts and videos at the moment. But we both are psychic mediums, and as such, we are your sidekicks to all things metaphysical, spiritual, paranormal, and in between. So in this podcast, that is what we talk about. We have listener stories. We have ghost investigations that we've gone on. We have reaction videos, a whole bunch of topics, spirit guides, ghosts, ghouls, goblins, cool gods and deities. If that's something you are interested in and you're jiggy with, then you're in the right podcast. If not, probably not the coolest place for you to be. But today, I was inspired by a post that one of my close friends made on Facebook that I recently read. And I thought that I would share it with you all and expand upon it a little more spiritually, if you will. Guys, ready? Cool. Let's get into it. So, as I said, I have a dear friend who lives near Sierra Vista, Arizona, who is the owner of her own spa business, and it is named A Little Bit of Kindness. It is a holistic healing and retreat space featuring metaphysical classes, meditation, yoga, energy healing, and spiritual events, including local psychic fairs. It's a non-denominational community, and it welcomes everyone. So if you're in the Sierra Vista area, or if you're ever traveling there, I believe she also runs a little Airbnb on the property as well, where it's like you can participate with the things that are going on if you go there. Don't quote me on that, but if you're interested, you can find a link in the description below to search their website and see what it's all about. But it's a little bit of kindness.org. All right, so although I do not consider myself a shaman, we do have someone on our Discord server who's a Patreon. They go by JB, and it's really interesting because they have found out that they have, I believe, shaman ancestors, or like an affinity to being a shaman or being drawn to being a shaman because of their ancestors and heritage and past lives and things like that. So I also thought about you, JB, shout out, when I read this post too and was like, oh, I want to talk about this because I hope there's other people that follow us that are shamans, and you can let me know what you think in the comments below if you're listening on the PsycKicks YouTube's extras channel or on Apple Podcast comments if you're listening on Apple Podcast. But if you're a shaman, let me know what you think about these things that we're going to talk about today too. So, although I do not consider myself a shaman like JB and others, I have recently been thinking about my purpose as a medium, what that title means to me, and how I want to go about broadening my horizons as such. I've recently thought about learning more about Reiki in order to hone my energy channeling abilities. Because at the end of the day, being a medium is all about channeling a soul's energy to communicate with them. And I've thought perhaps if I can learn to channel source, creator, God, whatever you'd like to call them's energy more productively, then I can not only apply it to my psychic abilities in the form of plant, animal, and house readings, but also with my mediumship capabilities as well. If you guys are new and you don't know what Reiki is, or this is like the first spiritual podcast that you're listening to, Reiki is like a form of energy healing. I have a friend who's actually a ordained minister and reverend. They went to theology school. Her name is Lynn, and she does Reiki. She actually learned how to become she became a Reiki master, I should say, in theology school. And it's super, super cool. The way that she explained it to me was kind of like taking a magnifying glass. Like imagine your body as a magnifying glass, and you are channeling creator, source, God's energy because you are a part of it. So you're able to channel that energy and use it to heal not only yourself, but others. And that's kind of the way she explained it to me. So I'm thinking that learning Reiki would be able to help me in my mediumship and psychic abilities, or at least learn a different way of channeling energy, because as a medium, I've just been able to see and talk to souls more and more ever since I was little. So my mediumship abilities have changed and like evolved over time, but I'm kind of, honestly, I think I'm a little ignorant to how I understand my own mediumship abilities and how they work, but I'm trying to broaden my horizons. So I've also thought about reading more books, specifically about history, people, and their societies. Understanding more about these topics, I believe, would be able to give spirit more information to use when communicating with me. After all, souls and spirit use the things which we have learned about and experienced in our own lives to convey their messages to us. So learning more about life as they experienced it would equip them with more tools to use to communicate with me. Anywho, with all of this being said, I've been giving my mediumship and the direction I want to take it more thought lately. So when I came across my friend Frankie's post, it made me think about things that as a professional medium, I've learned so far. So this post was titled, The 4 Laws of a Shaman. So we're going to go through each 4 laws, and I just want to expand upon them a little bit. So if you're interested, keep listening. All right, so the first says, the person who comes into our life is the right person. In other words, no one comes into our lives by chance. All the people around us who interact with us are there for a reason, to make us learn and advance in each situation. Now, this first law is so cool to me as it is something Spirit has organically taught me over the past few years through readings with others. Oftentimes during my mediumship readings, someone will ask me, why is this, quote, problematic person in my life? They cause nothing but strife and heartache, and I cannot understand why they're still in my life or why I feel I'm being forced to exist with them. This could be a family member, a relative, significant other, coworker, boss, teacher, even a pet plant, or the house that you're living in. Those beings and things have been placed in your life to teach you something in one form or fashion, no matter how much hardship they may present. Because within the relationship itself, there are many lessons to be learned. However, this is a very ego death way of thinking. If you're wondering what ego death is in this context, I would describe it as the loss of your sense of self as you originally defined it. Instead of believing things within this world are dependent on you, you would understand that even though this may be true, the world will continue to turn without you. Ego death results in an understanding of your place within the world as a whole instead of being dependent on your actions. Now, these relationships can happen in many different ways. It's not always in a way in which a person, place, or thing is directly affecting you. These relationships can also be ones which you are simply experiencing from an outside perspective, such as being in a relationship with someone who is experiencing direct hardships themselves. You as their friend may be supporting them the best that you can, however, their emotions and their actions can take a toll on you as well. For example, my parents are divorced, and I remember thinking as a child, I wish my mom and dad would just love each other again so we could be happy. Because their relationship and actions with one another directly affected me and my brother in many ways. I thought that the hardships I was put through because of their relationships were not needed and only negatively affected me. However, as I grew older, I began to try and let go of what they described as the reasons behind why they were unable to be in a marriage with one another any longer, and the why that, quote, should affect my relationships with each of them individually. I finally realized that in all reality, it shouldn't continue to affect me. And what I now understand is that sometimes learning what not to do from others is just as valuable as learning what to do from others. Both ways of learning are the same in essence, with one simply being the opposite of the other. Now I'm 26 years old, married, and have a child with my husband. And after nearly 2 decades of watching my parents interact with one another and myself, I've realized that I've learned exactly what not to do in a marriage in order to make it work. And I say this with as much love and understanding towards my parents as possible. Being in a relationship with my parents, as well as watching them interact with one another, being a part of that indirect relationship with them too, I've learned a lot. And even though I may have wished for that part of my life to be different, the lessons I've learned have been invaluable, necessary, and important. So the next time you're wondering why a certain person is in your life or was a part of your life at one point in time or another, try to think about what your relationship with them has taught you, the good, the bad, and the beautiful, because I'm sure your relationship with them, no matter the span of time, was meant for both of you to learn and grow together and perhaps now apart. So tying this back into mediumship and mediumship readings, so many people, like I said, have asked me those hard questions of like, why is this person in my life if they seem to be doing X, Y, or Z or whatever? And many times spirit has come forward and given me information because I don't know what's going on in their life. They'll just say like, what's up with Jackie? And I'm like, I don't know who Jackie is. Let me ask spirit. And whoever is supposed to step forward, whether it be an aunt, uncle, or a spirit guide, they step forward and they give me a little bit of a backstory about this person, your relationship with them, And then they'll give me an insight into, what it is that you're going through and why it's important. I might not be able to tell you the future reasonings of why it's important, but whatever it is that's happening at that point in time, Spirit will give me guidance to convey to you on what is the purpose of this relationship right now and how can you look at it in a more constructive way, because that is what these relationships are for constructive learning. Anyways, on to the second law. So the second law says, what happens is the only thing that could have happened. Nothing but nothing, absolutely nothing that happens to us in our lives could have been otherwise. Not even the most insignificant detail. There is no, if I had done such a thing, such another would have happened. Nope. Whatever happened was the only thing that could have happened, and to have had it happen has been for us to learn that lesson and move on. Each and every one of the situations that happen to us in our lives are perfect, even if our mind or our ego resists and does not want to accept it. Now, if I could put this law into my own words, I wouldn't say that, quote, each and every one of the situations that happens to us in our lives are perfect, even if our mind and ego resist and do not want to accept it. I would say each and every one of the situations that happen to us in our lives are necessary, and even if our mind and ego resist and do not want to accept it. Okay, so the second law has been hard for me to grasp, but can be one of the most healing or heartbreaking spiritual ideas to try and understand. Because if you can understand it, it will force you to accept existence for what it is, a place to grow spiritually through physicality. Questions I oftentimes receive during readings with people is, why would this happen to me, my friend, etc.? And what is the reason for bad people, or why does evil exist? For a while, I used to believe that parallel universes or alternate timelines congruent to our own existed, which I still do to an extent, but not in the same way that I once thought before. See, one of the ideas metaphysical enthusiasts, sci-fi fanatics, and some folks within the realm of spirituality believe is that if some things have happened in this life that they do not necessarily agree with, it must have just happened how they imagined it would, but in a different timeline or parallel dimension. However, I no longer believe this to be the case. I envision time as a river or stream, with branches running parallel and perpendicular to the current we are within. I used to interpret these branches of time as simultaneous currents, where reflections of our current physical selves existed, living their lives in the ways we wish we could or could not. This idea used to bring me comfort when something in my life didn't go as I imagined. I'd think to myself, oh, well, that's okay, because it worked out well for another version of me somewhere else. However, through conversations with Spirit personally and during readings for others, I have learned that only one version of ourself exists, and the branches from that stream of time I perceived are not different parallel realities of life that we're living now. No, those branches are the choices known as free will, which we can make. Tributaries of time, if you will. No matter the direction or choice you choose to make, each decision will lead you to the same end point and lesson. So it's not that I was perceiving alternate realities where a different choice would create a different outcome. It was that I was seeing the possible streams of realities I could have existed within if I had chosen a certain path instead. But no matter the choices you make, you will still be carried to the current towards the same lessons and destinations. You will either learn the lesson now or later down the stream of time. You cannot escape what your soul is meant to learn. So what happens was the only thing that could have happened, and it had to have happened so for us to learn that lesson and move on. Now, I'd like to emphasize the last part, to learn that lesson and move on. I know it's easier said than done, but to move on from past decisions and life events and accept them is just as important as trying to understand them. If we did not have the bad, then we would not understand the good. All right, if you're listening on the PsycKicks Extras YouTube channel, whatever you're feeling right now, please let me know in the comments below. Questions, comments, ideas, things that you might want me to answer in another podcast that I need to clarify or has sparked your mind, let me know. Same thing in the Apple Podcast reviews if you want to share what you're thinking, your thoughts. But we're moving on to law number 3, which says, any time it starts is the right time. Everything starts at the right time, neither before nor after. When we're ready for something new to start in our lives, then it will begin. This is another hard spiritual realization I have come to understand. At least I think I understand. And it is no less difficult to accept than the last two. Sometimes we feel that things just simply take forever to begin, or the inverse could also be true. Oftentimes we may feel like life is throwing too many new priorities, responsibilities, tasks, peoples, etc. our way. But in all reality, when those things begin, that is when the universe, God, creator, source, whatever powers that be, deemed it right for you. For me, my most recent struggle with this law has been with the birth of my son. I just had my first baby, and many things have happened in my life since I found out I was pregnant. And boy, have they made me rethink if I was ever meant to have my baby when I did. It has been so extremely difficult, much more than I ever thought it would ever be. But at the end of the day, if Oak was not meant to be born when he was, then he would not have been. One thing I've learned from past readings is that babies choose their parents, just like how your soul chooses to incarnate in this life that you're living right now. Your role as their parent is predetermined in spirit for them. If the timing was not meant to be, their souls would not be intertwined with your own. So I would presume the same goes for all other aspects of your life. Going back to your soul's soul contract. You may not be able to write your contract, but you do agree to it before you incarnate. Now, the fourth and the last shaman law states, when something ends, it ends, just like that. If something ended in our lives, it is for our evolution. Therefore, it is better to leave it, move on, and advance, already enriched by that experience. So if someone or something is meant for you, it will be. Not all things are meant to be hard in life. If someone leaves your life, the end of that relationship is not just the simple death of it, but the grounds or opening of a door for a new one to enter. A new lesson to learn, a new direction to take. Think of the lessons that person, place, or thing has taught you. Accept what you cannot yet understand and move on, because looking to keep what is not meant for you will not allow you to see the new opportunities, lessons, and life ahead of you. The circle continues whether you think so or not. So, I know this podcast was a little short, but I hope you enjoyed it. Next week, we'll be talking about a new topic. And I don't know. I was going through Facebook, not doom scrolling. Most of my Facebook is like cottagecore things and history. Because again, like I said, I've been trying to learn more history to help understand and give spirit more ways to communicate with me in my readings. Because as I've already mentioned, when souls communicate with me, they use things that I've seen, heard, listened to, thought about, experienced, stuff like that to convey information. So if I don't know something and there's not any like basis for them to draw from, then it's going to be harder for them to communicate with me. Imagine if you're a medium, imagine someone walks up to you and says, I need you to explain how to drive a car. And then they give you a file folder. And in that file folder, there is just a whole bunch of things that person has experienced in their life that you can use to describe to someone else how to drive a car. That is what it is like when spirit is trying to talk to you as a medium. They give you those things in order to convey messages. But if you don't have the correct information, it might be a little bit harder for them to, spiritually charade their way through talking to you. And the other biggest reason I wanted to make this podcast was, even though I don't consider myself a shaman, these 4 things that came up, I don't know, they resonated with me. Over the past 3.5, 4 years that I've been doing professional readings, I've learned these concepts, these laws, as it was presented in the Facebook post, just organically from talking to people. And it's been kind of interesting how everyone has a different journey. Whether you're a reverend, a shaman, a Reiki master, a psychic, I feel like you start to learn these lessons as a spiritual person, and I just wanted to talk about them. And if you guys could let me know what you think in the comments below, that would be great. Maybe we'll make another podcast out of the questions or comments you have. But until next time, I hope you enjoyed this short, sweet podcast. And we are your PsycKicks. Peace.